So we've been building step by step toward the skills that you'll need to write programs that really think. In Module 3, we worked with the IPO model, the input processing and output model. And you created your first IPO charts to break down problems into manageable pieces. And that was the foundation. So now in Module 4, we're going to take the next big step, giving programs the ability to make choices. After all, most real programs, they don't just run in like a straight line, that they react. They decide what to do based on conditions, and that's where decision structures and Boolean logic come in. So by the end of this lecture, you'll be able to explain what decision-making structures are. You'll be able to use Boolean logic to describe conditions, and then you'll be able to create pseudocode and flowcharts with decision branches. So let's get started. So think about your own daily life. Imagine waking up in the morning. You probably don't do the same thing every day in the same way. You might decide, if it's a weekday, then I'll get ready for class or get ready for work. Else, if it's the weekend, then you might sleep in and relax. This is a decision structure. You're taking in some information, which is like the day of the week, making some kind of logical choice, and then following a path based on that choice. Now, computers, they need to do the same thing. A program often has to check a condition, and then branch off in one of the several different directions. And that's what makes software powerful. It adapts to different input and different situations. Now, before we talk about decision structures in detail, we want to cover something called Boolean logic. So Boolean logic, it's the foundation of decision making. It's named after George Boole, a mathematician who came up with the idea that all logic can be reduced to true or false values. Now, here's the key. A Boolean expression is a condition that can only be true or false. Some examples of that is 5 greater than 3? True. Is 10 equal to 7? False. Did a customer spend $100 or more? True or false, depending on the input that we get. Now, when we write pseudocode or programs, we use a comparison operator to form the Boolean expressions. So for instance, this one here is the greater than. This is less than. This is greater than or equal to. This is less than or equal to. This is equal to. And this is not equal to. So for example, we can say maybe in, the formula that we have or in the program that we have that X could be greater than 100. Or we could say the temperature is less than or equal to 32. Or we can say the score is not equal to 0. These expressions, they drive decision structures. Boolean expressions, they're conditions to test for. And then computers, they check them to decide, now, once I check it, what do I do? Now, the most common decision structure is the if, then, else structure. And here's the pattern, say, in pseudocode. So we say if, whatever the condition is, then we do something, okay? Or else we'll do something else. And then we end if. So what happens here is that the program is going to check a condition, okay? And then if the condition is true, then it's going to execute, like whatever this block of instructions, would be. And then otherwise, it's going to execute this other block of instructions. Okay, so let's look at another example. So in this example, if the temperature is less than 32, then we're going to display it's freezing. Okay, or else we're going to display it's not freezing, and then we end it. So again, if the temperature is less than 32, we're going to get this first message. Otherwise, we're going to get this second message. Now, last week we practiced writing IPO charts. So let's connect that skill to pseudocode. Now, remember, an IPO chart has three columns. It has the input column, the processing column, and the output column. So let's use an example like the one that you'll be working with for your assignment. So for this one, the scenario is a free shipping order. So a store offers free shipping, if a customer spends $50 or more. Otherwise, the shipping is going to cost $5. So the input that we're going to provide is the order amount. Okay. The processing part that we're going to do is if the order is greater than or equal to 50, then the shipping is going to be free. It's going to be zero. Okay. The cost of shipping be zero, or else the shipping is going to be, like we said, $5. Okay. And so part of the processing that we have to do then is we have to calculate, once we get what the shipping cost is going to be, then we calculate the final total by saying the order plus whatever the shipping was. So if the shipping was zero, then we add that to the order, and that's our final total. If the shipping was $5, we add that to the order, and that's our final total. And so for output, then we're going to display the final total. Now that's the IPO chart that we worked on last week. Now let's turn this into pseudocode. Okay, so here's our pseudocode. So input is the order amount, and then we're saying we're using the if else statement. So if order amount is greater than or equal to 50, then shipping is 0. Else shipping is 5. Then we end if, and then we say the total equals order amount plus shipping, and then the output is the total. Okay, so that's how we convert that IPO chart to pseudocode. Now, sometimes it helps to visualize this with a flow chart. Decision structures and flow charts, they're drawn with the diamond shape. So the diamond shape here contains the condition, like, order is greater than or equal to 50. So one arrow will be labeled, and forgive me for, I don't know what happened here. One label comes out that says yes, which is true. Yes, it is greater than or equal to 50. The order amount is greater than or equal to 50. Okay. And then we'll have another arrow that would be say no. And this kind of represents that false. So that true versus false. And then each of these is going to lead to a different action. So if it's yes, or true, then the shipping is going to be 0. And then if it's not greater than or equal to 50, then the shipping is going to be 5. And then of course both paths rejoin as far as doing the total output. The final total is equal to the order amount plus shipping, and then of course the output is the total. So, flowcharts and pseudocodes, they're two ways of showing basically the same logic. This one is more visual. The pseudocode is something that, we as programmers use to kind of help us, as far as to get that programming logic down. Now, sometimes you need more than one decision. And so what you can do is you can nest them, or you can use the else if. Okay, so for example, if the score is greater than or equal to 90, then the grade is equal to A. Else if the score is greater than or equal to 80, then the grade is equal to B. Else if the score is greater than or equal to 70, then the grade is equal to C. And then else, and that's if it doesn't fall within any of these, then the grade is equal to F. And this is how we handle multiple choices. Now, for your discussion this week, you'll be asked to describe a situation in your daily life that uses an if-else structure. So I wanted to just kind of show you a few examples, but I want you to kind of come up with your own, okay? So like a coffee machine, okay, coffee example. So if the coffee machine has water, okay, then we brew, okay, that we brew the coffee, or else we fill the water tank. Okay, so that's an if else. So if there's water, if the coffee machine has water, then we brew the coffee, or else then we fill the water tank. Okay, another one is an umbrella. Okay, if it's raining, then we take the umbrella, else we leave it at home. Okay. Third one is schoolwork. If you finish your assignment on time, then you submit it, or else you'll email your professor for an extension. Okay. So I want you to think about, situation in your daily life that would use like this if else structure. Now, when you write your discussion posts, just think, what's a daily choice that you make, and how would you express it in an if else form. Okay. That's all you'll need to do for the discussion post. Okay. And of course, respond to your peers and things like that if it indicates that. But that's how you would approach as far as your discussion post. Okay, so now let's talk about the assignment for this week. Okay, so the scenario is that a store offers a discount of 10% if a customer spends $100 or more. Otherwise, there's no discount. So what we do is we break this into steps. Okay, the input is we ask for the purchase amount. Okay, we get the purchase amount. The decision is going to be to check if it's greater than or equal to 100, right? And then if yes, we're going to apply a 10% discount. Okay, but if no, then there'll be no discount. We'll keep the total as is. And then, of course, our output is going to be to show the final total. So again, if I were to put this in pseudocode, okay, I would say my input is the purchase amount, okay? And then when I go to write my if else statement, if purchase amount is greater than or equal to 100, then I'm going to have my block of code that's going to be executed if that's true, which is the discount is the purchase amount times 0.10, which is that 10%. And then the total then will be the purchase amount minus the discount. Okay. Then I'm going to have an else, which is going to be, it's just going to stay the same. Total is going to be the purchase amount. There won't be a discount. Okay. Then I'm going to end my if statement. Okay. And then my output would be my total. Now, for those of you that want to try the optional Python enrichment for extra credit, let me give you a little guidance on that. Again, this is optional. You don't have to do it, but if you're familiar with Python, this may be something you want to do for a little extra credit. Okay, so you're basically going to take the same logic from the pseudocode that you're going to write from the original assignment, and you're going to write it in Python. Okay, so here's how you can approach it step by step. Okay, so first you're going to get the input from the user. So in pseudocode, you use something like input purchase amount. In Python, you're going to use the input function. Remember that input function gives you a string, so you'll need to convert it to a number type like a float. Okay, don't forget that. Okay. Then you're going to set up your if else statement. Okay, so think about your pseudocode. If the purchase amount is greater than or equal to 100, then you're going to apply the discount, else there's going to be no discount. And then, of course, that'll be your end if. But in Python, what you're going to do is you're going to use, you'll use the if and else keywords. But don't forget the colon, okay, at the end of the line, okay? Then you're going to do the math. So if the condition is true, then you're going to calculate the discount as 10% of the purchase amount. And then you're going to subtract the discount from the purchase amount to get the total. But if the condition is false, then we're just going to keep the total as the purchase amount. Okay. And then the output in pseudocode, we just wrote output total. Okay. But in Python, you'll need to use the print function. Okay. So if you follow these steps, okay, you'll have a working Python program that kind of mirrors, well, actually mirrors your pseudocode. Okay. Now, one last tip I want to give you, if your program doesn't run the first time, don't panic. Python will give you an error message that usually points to what went wrong. I want you to check things like, did you indent the lines under your if and else statements? Did you remember to add the colon, at the end of the if and else lines? And did you convert your input into a number? Okay. Fix those things if you find that those are the problems, and then you should be good. After I grade everyone's, then I'm going to post the Python code for you to look at. But like I said, this is just optional. What I really want you to do is I want you to really kind of hone in on as far as those pseudocode. Once you get the pseudocode, you can transfer pseudocode to any language, Python, .NET, PHP, whatever it is. Okay. Okay, so let's recap what we've learned today. So programs need decision structures to make choices. Okay, and those decisions are based on Boolean logic. Remember, true or false expressions. Now, the most common structure is the if then else statements. And remember, you can connect your IPO chart, like from the last week, to pseudocode and flowcharts with decisions. Now, remember, for your discussion, I want you to think of a real life if else situation, and I want you to describe it in logical terms like we did. Okay, if you need to go back through this video, then do so. And then also for your assignment, you're going to write pseudocode for the scenario that I've given you. That's for the store discount problem. And then if you feel, that you want to get some extra credit or whatever the case is, then go ahead and try the Python version for extra credit, okay? Now, I just want to say learning decision structure, that's probably one of the most exciting parts of programming because it makes your program really kind of feel alive. It makes them respond. They can choose things, and so now you've got the tools to design that logic, okay? Now that's it for Module 4. I look forward to seeing your discussions and your pseudocode assignments. I want you to keep practicing, and I promise it's going to feel a lot more natural, with the next week. Right now, it kind of may feel, okay, how do I follow this? But eventually, it's gonna feel natural. Pseudocode is going to feel natural to you. Okay. Other than that, have a great week.